Imagine a land that lived under ice for millennia, where humankind struggled to survive amidst the harshness of nature before gradually evolving into a thriving society. A land that witnessed the rise of the Vikings, medieval invasions, and the collapse of empires, yet withstood wars and defeats to become a model of democracy and prosperity. Welcome to this new video in our series on the history of European countries. This is Denmark, a small country in size, but steeped in history. From its Neolithic beginnings, through the Bronze and Iron Ages, and into the modern era, its people have forged their identity through challenge, resilience, and innovation. Together, we will journey through thousands of years to uncover how the land of the Vikings transformed into one of the most stable, just, and prosperous countries in the world today. Denmark is one of the oldest human settlements in Northern Europe, with a history stretching back nearly 12,000 years to the end of the last ice age. During that period, most of Scandinavia was covered in thick ice, making only the southern regions habitable. Animals like reindeer and elk began to appear, followed by early humans. Nomadic hunter-gatherers searching for food in a harsh and unpredictable environment. As the climate improved and temperatures gradually rose, the barren tundra transformed into sparse, then dense forests. The first settled human cultures emerged, such as the Maglemosian culture, which relied on hunting, fishing, and exploiting marshes and rivers. Life was not easy. Mass graves and bog remains reveal the harsh living conditions and high mortality rates, especially among children and young adults. By 6000 BCE, the approximate geography of Denmark as we know it today had taken shape, and the population began transitioning from a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to agriculture and animal husbandry. During the Neolithic period, permanent villages emerged and rock tombs and dolmens were constructed, reflecting the development of religious beliefs and the rise of complex social bonds. Denmark entered the Norse Bronze Age around 1500 BCE. A period of cultural and religious flourishing characterized by the production of bronze tools, the widespread use of gold jewelry, and the practice of burying the dead beneath massive mounds, indicating the emergence of distinct social classes and a ruling elite. The Iron Age brought new climatic challenges, with colder and wetter weather prompting some groups to migrate south and creating opportunities for iron extraction from peat bogs. During this period, Denmark interacted with the outside world, particularly the Roman Empire, through trade and military service. Danish warriors served in Roman armies, bringing back coins, weapons, and cultural influences. The earliest runic inscriptions also appeared, marking the beginning of written expression of Scandinavian identity. With the decline of Roman power, Northern Europe experienced Germanic migrations, reshaping the demographic and political landscape. From these transformations emerged the Viking Age in the late 8th century, a major turning point in Danish history. The Danes became a formidable maritime power, thanks to their advanced ships and navigational skills. Viking activities extended from the coasts of Britain and France to the Russian rivers leading to Constantinople. Their role was not limited to conquest. They also engaged in trade and settlement, establishing colonies in England, Danelaw, Normandy, Iceland, and Greenland. During this period, Denmark began to unify politically. Gorm the Old is considered the first historically recognized Danish king, but it was his son, Harald Bluetooth, who brought the greatest transformation. He formally unified the country and converted to Christianity in 965 CE, ending centuries of pagan beliefs. With the introduction of Christianity, the king's authority was strengthened, and the Danish state began to take shape as a centralized political entity. Danish influence reached its zenith in the Middle Ages, particularly in the Baltic region, during the reign of kings like Valdemar the Great, who reorganized the state, established its administrative and military foundations, and contributed to the founding of Copenhagen. However, this expansion was short-lived. Military defeats, the rise of the nobility, and the growing influence of the Church weakened royal power and led to the imposition of the first constitutional charter in Danish history. During the 16th and 17th centuries, Denmark underwent pivotal transformations, becoming entangled in major European conflicts, particularly the religious struggle between Catholics and Protestants. With the outbreak of the 30 Years' War, King Christian IV intervened in defense of the Protestant cause, but his campaign ended in a crushing defeat and the occupation of parts of Denmark. He was forced to sign the Treaty of Lübeck, abandoning his German ambitions. This defeat weakened Denmark's position and brought it into direct conflict with Sweden, the rising power in the north. In the mid-17th century, during wars such as the Torstensson War and the Second Northern War, Denmark suffered significant territorial losses to Sweden, including strategic eastern regions and Norway. The kingdom was nearly wiped off the map, but Copenhagen's resilience and crucial support from the Netherlands and other European powers saved it. Despite this, Sweden emerged as the dominant Scandinavian power, and Denmark was forced to accept new borders that largely remain today. These defeats led to the establishment of absolutism in Denmark in 1660, with King Frederick III consolidating power at the expense of the nobility. The country underwent extensive administrative and legal reforms during the 17th and 18th centuries, including the unification of laws and modernization of the tax system. However, the economy remained largely agrarian, dominated by a few large landowners, and peasants were reduced to a form of serfdom under the land concession system. In the second half of the 18th century, major agrarian reforms gradually abolished serfdom and transformed peasants into free landowners, fostering economic growth. This coincided with the spread of Enlightenment ideals, a growing sense of Danish nationalism, and a decline in foreign influence at court. Although reforms were briefly suppressed after the execution of Dr. Struensee in 1772, the reform movement regained momentum after 1784, making Denmark a model of enlightened absolutism. Freedom of the press, universal education, and free trade were introduced, and absolutism was gradually weakened from within. At the same time, Denmark had limited colonial ventures in India, the Caribbean and West Africa, and participated in global trade, including the slave trade. However, the Napoleonic Wars marked a turning point. Britain bombarded Copenhagen and seized the Danish fleet, bankrupting the state. The disaster culminated in 1814 with the Treaty of Kiel, ending the Danish-Norwegian Union and transferring Norway to Sweden. Despite this loss, Denmark entered a new era characterized by a cultural and intellectual renaissance, the introduction of compulsory education, and the beginning of the Danish Golden Age, paving the way toward a modern constitutional state in the 19th century. After the shock of the 1864 defeat and the loss of Schleswig and Holstein, Denmark realized that the imperial era was over, and survival depended not on military might, but on rebuilding the state from within. The defeat became a historical turning point, prompting the nation to focus on human development, education, and production, rather than expansion and war. A new, modest nationalism emerged, celebrating the peasantry, the countryside, and collective labour, rather than military glory. The second half of the 19th century saw profound agricultural reforms, particularly in Jutland, where modern technologies were introduced and land ownership reorganized. allowing for the rise of a middle class of farmers. With the development of railways and ports, Danish industry took off despite limited natural resources, relying on efficiency and organization rather than raw materials. Denmark became one of Europe's largest exporters of butter and dairy products, supported by a cooperative system and advanced agricultural education. Rural to urban migration transformed the social structure, and the labour movement emerged as a significant political and social force. With the founding of the Social Democratic Party, a long struggle began for fair wages, workers' rights and social protection. By 1901, the principle of parliamentary government was firmly established, and no government could rule against the will of the elected majority, a pivotal shift in Danish political history. Denmark entered the 20th century as a small, cautious, yet politically stable country. It maintained neutrality in World War I, but its export-based economy suffered severe shocks, leading to shortages and rationing. After the war, it regained control of North Schleswig through a referendum, a rare, peaceful victory in post-war Europe. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the Danish system's resilience became evident. Major political compromises mitigated the crisis, and the foundations of the modern welfare state, based on social security, unemployment insurance and public education, were laid. However, neutrality did not shield Denmark from World War II. In 1940, Denmark was occupied by Nazi Germany, an occupation that began with relative flexibility before becoming increasingly harsh. Despite restrictions, the Danes carried out one of history's most remarkable humanitarian rescue operations, smuggling the vast majority of Jews to Sweden in 1943. By 1945, Denmark had suffered profound wounds, but its institutions and national unity remained intact. Lessons from the war led Denmark to reassess its foreign policy. Abandoning neutrality, it joined NATO in 1949, becoming part of the Western Bloc during the Cold War. Domestically, the pace of building the welfare state accelerated, with expansions in education, healthcare and women's rights, culminating in constitutional reforms in 1953. In 1973, Denmark joined the European Community, the precursor to the European Union, while maintaining a cautious distance from full integration, rejecting the single currency and preserving sovereignty on key issues. This balance between engagement and caution became a defining characteristic of Danish politics. In the 21st century, Denmark has faced new challenges: globalization, immigration, terrorism and global economic crises. It participated in international military operations such as in Afghanistan, paying a human price and sparking societal debates about the country's role in the world. At the same time, it continued to develop its social model, remaining one of the most egalitarian and transparent countries worldwide. Today, Denmark stands as a modern state with a firmly established democracy, an advanced knowledge-based economy powered by renewable energy, and a society that balances tradition and innovation. Small in size, but vast in experience, it chose, after centuries of conflict, to place the individual at the center of the state, rather than the other way around. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.